All right. Good morning, everybody. We are in for such a treat this morning. I've already spoken to our speaker a little bit, and it is going to be just a wonderful presentation. And we've got music. It's first Sunday, so it's a good day. I want to welcome everyone here to the Humanists of Greater Portland meeting. We're here at Friendly House this morning. Of course, humanism is a philosophy informed by science, inspired by art, and motivated by compassion. Humanists strive to lead meaningful and ethical lives and use reason and empathy to guide their decisions and actions. We live ethical lives because we honor the fact that this is the only life of which we are certain. As humanists, we affirm the dignity and worth of all people, and we do this not only to acknowledge all that humans have accomplished in the arts and science and humanities, but also simply for the possibility of peace and well-being when people interact with respect for one another.
Sit and think on a warm summer evening. I stopped to drink, but the tavern shut down. I had planned to see you this summer. Plans go wrong, and we will be so very long alone. Tried to count the days apart. It seems too long ago. I wish I had a way to know when I'd see you again. Seems a shame, it's a warm summer evening. There's no rain like in movies or songs. You should be here and we'd walk in the moonlight. Someone set the stage all wrong. They didn't know you'd gone.
Guys, yeah. You guys wrote that song? Who wrote that song?
I wrote the melody and he wrote most of the words. And some of the melody.
We are so lucky to have you all. Hank, thank you. Pete and Paul, thank you. That was really lovely this morning. What a great way to start a Sunday. Thank you. Our topic today, Bridging Bonds, the role of dogs in veteran rehabilitation, incorporates the human commitment of service and participation. The service and participation means putting values into action in ways that positively impact our communities. Dan Regester is today's speaker, and Ranger is his accompanying member, his K9 member. Dan is the executive director of K9 Kavalry. He is a decorated veteran who became a passionate advocate for service members and their furry companions. K9 Kavalry is a nonprofit dedicated to empowering veterans through service dog training. His leadership fosters a culture of compassion and excellence, ensuring that veterans across the nation receive the support they need. Dan's commitment to service and his strategic vision drives K9 Kavalry's mission forward and makes a profound impact on the lives of veterans and their canine partners. Dan, welcome. I had a lovely conversation with Dan this morning, and we are in for an amazing program today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I just want to say thanks for having us and giving us the opportunity to talk to you guys. Spent a lot of time in the last couple of days thinking about how I wanted to frame this discussion and the things that were most important to you and your community. And I was reminded last night that it's been a while since I actually told my own story. You know, we have more than 200 veterans in our organization right now with dogs across the entire nation. We're in 17 states. Each one of them has their own story with their exposure and their why and their disabilities and the ways that their dog performs to help them deal with those issues in reality. And I'm not any exception to that. I see myself as the first member of K9 Kavalry, really just a co-founder. I want to start by telling you a story. And we're going to go all the way back to through 2012. Now, in 2012, I was here in Portland, in North Portland specifically. For those of you who know Farragut Park, that's kind of where we started. And at the time, I was in customer service, but my customers were buyers for large grocery chains like Fred Meyer at the time and QVC and that kind of stuff. And they were very demanding as buyers for their stores, which was totally fine. I'm no stranger to dealing with high demand and being able to perform. That's kind of one of the hallmarks of the veteran in the first place, to be able to rise to the issue and rise the situation and find a solution. But at the time, I didn't know that I needed a service dog. I was dealing with my own PTSD and just really learning what that was and how to operate with it. All the way across the world, in Afghanistan, there was a soldier who was assigned to the 173rd Airborne. His name was Andrew Keller. Now, Andrew was from Tigard, and his family is still here. They might be on the Zoom right now. They know that I talk about Andrew a lot because Andrew was killed in action in 2012. And all he ever wanted to do with his life was make a change to the world in a positive way. And this is the route that he chose. And he had such a high trajectory. He was going through Ranger School. He got assigned to the 173rd Airborne, which is a really big deal. That's based out of Aviano, Italy. And his death really struck the community hard. And not just his family, but also the people that he grew up with. He was big into football. And his parents and his family as a whole really struggled to kind of find a way to deal with the loss, but also honor the commitment and honor the sacrifice. Now, it came to be that there was another soldier, this time it's a Marine, law enforcement dog handler. His name is Keaton Coffey. And he was also in Afghanistan in 2012, and he was also killed in action. Strange enough, these two fathers met each other at Willamette National Cemetery. Andrew's and Keaton's headstones are 2 rows and two steps apart. So they're pretty close to each other. And they met each other there. They shared their stories. They shared their grief. ended up creating a nonprofit. It's doing fine.
Okay.
Ended up creating a nonprofit to help honor their commitment and their dedication to creating a better world. Subsequently formed a nonprofit. They did a lot of things for veterans and first responders. And one of the things that they did is they gave away a whole bunch of dogs in the first couple of years. Now, mind you, these aren't trained dogs that they were giving out. They weren't one of those train a dog, give a dog model type of nonprofit. They were giving puppies to veterans who needed companionship. And in their grief and in their loss, they found a way to fulfill Andrew and Keaton's commitment to making the world a better place. Now, of the dogs that they gave away that year, this one right here was number 5. And it was really special because at the time, Ranger was being raised in Andrew Keller's household. His mom and dad were raising him. They loved him. They wanted to make sure that he went to the right veteran, and they ended up choosing me. But I wasn't blind to the idea that this dog is special. It's not just a 6-month-old puppy that someone's giving to another person. He carries with him the honor and the discipline and the bravery and the commitment of Andrew Keller through his family, through his actions, and also through visible means like the patch that's currently on his vest right now. When they gave him to me, they didn't just give me a dog, they gave me an opportunity. They gave me the ability to find a way to rise above my own personal version of PTSD, which is hypervigilance and, being in social situations that are uncomfortable for me. But he was just a puppy, right? Service dog potential, right? Go and get it. Well, I'm an airman. I flew on tankers in the KC-135 in the Air Force. And if you don't know what that is, that's an in-flight refueler. So that means that I refueled airplanes over combat zones so that they can monitor the no-fly zone and keep us safe and keep the Kurds safe. I spent a lot of time working that particular process with NATO during the Kosovo War. I don't give up easily. I'm not deterred easily, and I'm definitely not afraid of hard work, which is why I took it seriously. If I'm going to be treating my PTSD and I'm going to be real about my own issues and making sure that I become a better person the next day and the next day and the next day with the help of the dog, then I better figure out how to make the dog work for me so that I can work for him. So I went to the VA and I got voc rehab. They paid to have me become a dog trainer. I studied, I graduated, I got my credentials. And I was like, great, I can actually DIY my own service dog. But that wasn't enough. There were many other veterans in and around my purview and my circles that were struggling with the same kinds of issues. Maybe not exactly the same issues, but some were dealing with depression, some were dealing with hypervigilance, some were dealing with social anxiety, some were dealing with military sexual trauma, some were dealing with the memories that they carried home with them after their engagements. And seeing the need there, that's when I decided that I was going to take it the next step. So I created a curriculum on how to DIY your own service dog the way that I did. So I created a curriculum that the veterans could follow. Why? Because we all talk veteran. You've heard of it, the acronyms, the cross branch joking, right? Kind of rubbing on each other and encouraging each other, really. The need for the companionship and the camaraderie is real for a veteran when they separate. It doesn't exist out here in the same way that it does in the foxhole or in the tank or in the tanker or on the boat. And seeing that need, I stepped back and I said, it's still not enough. We have to create a community to serve these veterans so that they have a place to be, where they can talk their language and express themselves in the way that they want to and used to. And more importantly, most importantly, become part of a mission. Now, it's real hard to explain the value of a mission to a soldier, because if you've never become part of a mission, if you've never become part of something that's bigger than you, where your strength is much larger than your numbers, it's not really something that you can envision or fantasize about. But for us, it's real. The things that we could do in the military with our strength and our resolve and our commitment is absolutely unreal. So I decided to tap that too. We made a mission out of K9 Kavalry, not just to get service dog training into the hands of the veterans, but also to create a community where they can be themselves and they can share their issues and they can support each other. So, a lot of people think, and it is quite common out there with nonprofits, that you see the model where they train a dog and give a dog to a veteran or somebody, right? And that's good for a lot of people. It's kind of akin, though, to giving someone a Swiss Army knife and saying, with this, you'll find the tools to try to help yourself. But the instruction that comes with it sometimes is vague. And most importantly, when you give a dog when you rehome a dog and you replace a dog with another person, there's a whole process that goes with that. Anytime a dog changes their environment or their family, it's traumatizing to them. We found that it's more useful to work with a veteran that has a dog versus training a dog to give to a veteran. And that's actually been our model from the very beginning. My job, I used to say, is shut up and bring me your dog so I could love on it, right? And then I'll tell you what your dog tells me where you're messing up, and then you can go home and fix it, right? Veteran talk, right? Look, we don't give dogs to veterans. We give hope to veterans with dogs. We show them a better way. What are we trying to do here? We're trying to help PTSD issues, social anxiety issues, social issues that are incapacitating to a veteran that has seen war. And we can't do that just by giving them a dog. We can't even give that by training them. Because what happens is, when the veteran steps into a commitment, like owning a dog and taking responsibility for their ongoing training, it changes something in their mindset. It changes something in their behaviors. It activates the soldier, and they step up to the discipline and up to the honor. They take responsibility for the dog, thereby taking responsibility for themselves. They realize what behaviors their own that can harm or help the dog, and they choose a better path. But it's more than that commitment. It's more than that, We have a lot of veterans that are in our program that are actually on the Zoom right now. For you guys, I just want to say, keep working that AVT. You're doing great. And for the rest of you, I'm going to tell you what AVT is because it's super secret, classified. But it's not just me running the show anymore. Actually, it never was. I consider myself a co-founder for K9 Kavalry with Andrew and Keaton and their families that actually have adopted me. Talk to them all the time. He knows their names. I'm not going to say it. He's going to go crazy. He's going to go looking for them. But the point is, PTSD, social anxiety, the fallout of military sexual trauma, distrust, these are all things that the dogs can absorb. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about my process with him and what my expectations were going in and then what I ended up having in the end. So I'm gonna put the notes away now. You know, when I first started working with Ranger, the nonprofit that gave them to me provided cash for us to go to and meet with trainers. And I went to animal behavior college, and then I also went to study with people that were at kennels with German Shepherds. I studied with an organization that takes Belgian Malinois out to Africa to hunt out poachers. Kind of had a wide variety, but you know, for me, I was thinking, well, if I'm in these situations where I have the potential to explode or handle a situation in a way that might make me go to jail because I did something incorrect in this environment versus incorrect in that environment. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, the dog can guard. The dog can be a guard, right? Well, that was instantly shot because the first time I said that to my trainer, he said, okay, he went away and he came back with a mask, a clown mask and a blanket over his shoulders. And he tried to scare Ranger, and Ranger's just like, no. He shied away from it. He was like, nope, not a defense dog. I mean, I guess you could expect that from a chocolate lab. Maybe if it was a shepherd, but I'm not a shepherd guy. I'm definitely a lab guy. So then became the rest of it. Well, it all kind of happened over time. Ranger reads rooms. He takes measure of an environment, and then he gets comfortable like he is right now. But what he's actually doing is he's acting as my radar. I go into a place and he finds out what the situation is, and then he puts that on, this is the neutral, and then something changes or something becomes more activated, right? He reacts to that, and then I can sense that from him. That means that an airman like me doesn't have to go into a restaurant and always sit facing the door. That means that I don't have to constantly walk around going, threat, 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 not a threat, threat, not a threat, right? Radar, he's a radar dog, that's his job description. So we can talk a lot about the benefits, you know, sure, they help curb PTSD, they help curb mental issues, they make it easier, but that wasn't good enough for me anyways, because there's so many different ways that we're serving. We created 10 job descriptions for our dogs. Radar is just one. I'll give you another one. The other one is mirror. Now, a mirror dog, similarly to a radar dog, goes into public, watches the environment. But for a radar dog, the environment is the focus. For a mirror dog, the veteran is the focus. Now, I say that because we know that in typical social anxiety situations, it's kind of like stacking a plate. It's stacking plates on your hand, right? You know, one difficult situation, there's a plate, and then another one, another one. And in our experience, veterans with this issue will continue stacking plates, not knowing how high it's going until it finally collapses, right? You know, this made me nervous, that made me nervous, and they start to close in, and then all of a sudden crash. And what we do with those veterans is we train them to focus in on the dog, make eye contact. The dog becomes a static point for the moment. The dog can tell them, hey, you've got 35 plates going on, and you're about to crash right now. What else? What's going on, right? But the veteran won't normally see that. It's an early warning system. If a veteran's feeling social anxiety, they check in with their dog, they can see their actual anxiety levels in real time, fed back to them. So they don't have to wonder, how anxious am I? The dog will tell them. And if they can get that cue before the crash happens, they can remove themselves from a situation without having to go into the red zone. That's what a mirror dog does. We have, like I said, 8 more. I'll just name off a few. The Catalyst, which deals with chronic depression. We have Compass, which is for veterans that have inappropriate affect or social bluntness. Tether for veterans that have flashbacks, and etc. Narrowing it down makes it easier for veterans to kind of work towards the benefit that they're looking for from their dog. But that's not enough, because situations always change. Every situation is different. So I'm going to give you a few stories here about some of the dogs in our pack. The first one has to do with a dog named Rocky. And Rocky happens to live in Pennsylvania. And he travels with his veteran, who is a former Army Major SOCOM soldier. And she is now a talent scout for baseball, which means she travels to a lot of South America countries. And Rocky goes with her. Now, you would expect, obviously, some pushback from the travel agencies and the airports and things like that. And she manages them pretty well. But she ended up in a situation where somebody misunderstood the behavior that the dog was displaying, which was a blocking behavior, trying to keep someone away from her. And they wanted to raise an issue with it. And it was raised, and then, you know, she ended up having to go to another counter to deal with it. And the whole time she's just fuming. She has the same kind of flavor that I have, that hypervigilance, I'm activated kind of a thing. The dog kept her calm. The dog knew she was, you know, getting there. But think of the consequences if she were to actually invoke the veteran at that moment and become irate at that moment, or do what she needs to do. By the way, she was trying to fly down to see her nephew's graduation, which she paid for. She didn't get to go. Now, I say this because this is a situation where this veteran definitely was at risk of making the situation worse through their own behaviors and their own actions. And the dog was able to prevent those actions, even though the dog was the focus of the problem for everybody else. Later, JetBlue did apologize and accepted responsibility for the misinformed report. Another one, we have K9 Captain Storm. Storm is a great dog. Now, we're talking about a veteran here who was a combat mechanic in the Army. And he now has seizures that just come out of the blue. And typically when he wakes up from a seizure, he doesn't know where he is, how long he's been out, what's going on. There's a fog when he wakes up, and Storm's responsibility is to maintain a static position during the seizure so that he becomes a grounding point when the veteran wakes up. Just having the dog there and the awareness and the emotional connection to the dog is enough to get the veteran back to straight once these situations occur. Does a dog prevent the seizures? Nah, there's really no way to do that. Can he detect them? Maybe someday he will. We can get into scent training or something like that. But the idea of the veteran, one, not knowing when they're going to check out. Two, waking up and not knowing what happened, or even worse, not remembering names or places. And three, the fear that would be instilled in a situation like that where you just woke up with nothing in your head, right? The dog creates the anchor that the veteran needs in order to resolve all those issues. And he does it pretty consistently. Goes with them to the VA, goes with them pretty much everywhere they go. The last one I want to tell you about is Lieutenant General Ziggy. Now, yes, all of our dogs have ranks. I'll get to that in a moment. Ranger, what are you doing, man? You taking a walk? You can go say hi. Go say hi. Just don't let him walk out of the room, and don't feed him. Okay, so Lieutenant General Ziggy. This one's special to us, but his veteran had open heart surgery recently. And we knew it was going to happen. We anticipated it. We watched it as it went down. Wife and Ziggy did not leave the veteran's bedside for the entire surgery. They were there for 20 hours at the hospital. Now, you might think, in the scope of service dog, he is there doing the thing, but like, what does K9K have to do with this particular moment? Well, training is not enough. Community is not enough. If you have a community with your auxiliary resources, you need to provide for each other too. In a moment like this, we are 100% capable of making the situations flow smoother, get better. And what we did in this case is we activated a volunteer who's on the Zoom call right now. She went and got some Italian food and some supplies for the dog and got over to the hospital and delivered them to the veteran in the room. And what's funny about that is, there's a lot of karma that happens within our organization as well. And in this case, it just so happened that even though it was after visitor hours, someone held the door open for them. And someone else used their card to get them in the elevator. And someone else got them into the room. Now, using your imagination, if you were that veteran and you had, your family for support, but you also were working with your brothers and sisters, you wake up and you find that there's a PAC member there with supplies and food for your wife because she's been there for 20 hours. That in and of itself is the kind of thing that supports and enables the veterans to move on to a better place in their mind when they're dealing with difficult situations. It doesn't take a lot. It just takes focus and attention and detail and commitment and honor. It's a true story, happened recently. When I walk into a room, let's say I don't have my dog, I walk into a room. I hear that I can be kind of intimidating, right? The beard, the Viking hair. That has an effect on me. It makes it more difficult for me to break through the social barrier and have a conversation with somebody sometimes if I'm being prejudged by how I look. And then you add soldier or airman on top of that, and then there's more prejudgments. Or you add any number of things. Now, I know the humanists don't really think this way. And I give it to you guys for having, open mind on just about every issue that involves, the differences among us. But it's still not easy because, there's always that wall. But when I walk in with him, he melts the room. He makes it so easy for me to talk to people, even in my own language, if I can relate. And instead of frowns, I see smiles. And instead of avoidance, I see inclusion. And instead of short words, I get full conversations. And that's just a natural effect of having the dog with me, right? And as a veteran with PTSD, it's kind of hard to really trust and to really go deep into these issues when people are kind of on that guard. He takes care of that. On the other hand, if there's somebody nefarious around, they're going to do something maybe a little criminal, right? They're not going to want to do it around my dog or around me, really. But, he helps avoid difficult situations because people are less likely to play the fool when there's a dog around because they don't want to have to deal with a dog for doing something dumb. It creates a better environment for me just by having him. And I really rely on that a lot. So over the course of time, since I've gotten a ranger, we've done a lot of work to try to serve the veteran community, especially with the service dogs. I told you about how I started, and then it expanded to the curriculum, and then it expanded to the job descriptions. And now we're in a world where things are virtual, right? We've got some of our PAC members here on Zoom. We capitalize on that. We use technology. We've dipped into AI, we've done VR. We have a lot of resources on hand that makes us able to cooperate with other volunteers to keep the mission going and make it bigger. And that's been a development process, years in the making. But a couple of years ago, in 2020, I think, maybe 21, I was diagnosed with cancer. And my mindset was not, okay, how much time do I have to live? Or, oh my God, my life is over. It only gave me more resolve. And there was a point where I actually was hospitalized. And when that moment happened, my decision was not to lay down and die in a hospital. I don't think that's my way. I mean, if you ask me, I'd like to die jumping out of an airplane. That sounds fun. I'm going to die in the air. I'm an airman. Give me a break. But it was a double down moment for me. We were already on the road of getting our ship filled with the right volunteers in the right positions, doing the right thing. We have a supply department, operations department, training department, communications department, mission control. We have a logistics department. And it all is developed to properly serve the mission. And I didn't want that to die. What we have is something unique and something real that is based on this honor and discipline that we covet. And so, my way was, when life gives you a shit sandwich, I'm just going to shove it right into the afterburner, right? I'm just going to put it right in the gas tank and forget about it, because that's all you can do. And that's kind of the most important thing, everyone here, everyone there, whoever's watching this on YouTube later, you have the ability to become part of something that's bigger than yourself. It takes the commitment, it takes the dedication, it takes the ability to reach just a little bit further than the low-hanging fruit. But when you activate that, the rewards that you get are immense, because you share in the rewards of everybody else that's doing the same thing. A mission is incredibly valuable, not just to me, not just to the people at K9K. It's valuable to everybody. This is how society thrives. You can be yourself, or you can be part of a bigger picture. So the one thing that it takes is commitment. And not just commitment, but commitment to excellence, which is really rare out in the world. For people that look at the prospect of self-governing, they struggle with finding out what the best way is, or whether or not it's right or wrong, right? But we all know the difference between right or wrong in the end. And it's attainable to all of us. It's a commitment that veterans embrace pretty easily. Some because they just ended up in their MOS and they just have to do it no matter what. Others because they believe that this is the way that we protect our society. But the resolve is, in and of itself, a reward. Now I'm going to tell you another story here. I survived a crash landing once in my tanker. This was in '98. And it was after what we call an operational mission, which is you got to do it or die. Gas gets transferred, no other option. Well, we landed and we broke our landing gear, and we had to figure out how to make it happen. Now, I could have insisted on jumping out of the side wing hatch with a parachute to save my skin. I could have told the pilot to go somewhere else or ditch it in the sea. Not that he would, but I could have done that. But I was in this plane with 3 other individuals who were in the same situation as I was. And even though my piece of this landing was small by comparison to the pilot who had to land the plane in the first place. It was still important. It was something that needed to get done, something the pilot couldn't do because he'd have to get out of his seat. I had to pull circuit breakers so the planes or for the engines didn't erupt. But even with such a small task, realizing the importance that it was the one thing that I needed to do to save my crew, even though it was scary, even though I thought I might die, I did it. And I did it at the right time. I did it. I made sure that it was done correctly. And that is what it takes, the commitment to excellence, and then letting the rest play its course. We do that at K9 Kavalry. We're committed to the excellence. This is why we use high technology. This is why we've never charged a veteran a single dime since we've started. This is why you found us. And this is why I'm here today. A lot of businesses and nonprofits will want to glamorize their benefits and glamorize their process. Big marketing budgets, huge compensation packages. And not that that's bad. Everybody loves money. Everybody needs money, but I don't right now. You know, I'm well suited with the VA. I have enough to meet my means, and that's about all I need. This is why I don't take a salary for K9K. I'm here as a volunteer today. And the reason for that goes all the way back to Andrew Keller and the meaning of the sacrifice and donation of giving Ranger to me. I'll never let that go. This is why honor and discipline has been fabricated in the cornerstones and the foundation of our organization. This is why the organization has been able to fly for 8 years without any major, huge contributions and massive marketing campaigns. Because the program works. And the program works because of the discipline and the honor and the mission. Now, you all have a mission of some sorts. Maybe it comes and goes. Maybe you poke at it every once in a while. Maybe you run it full time. You all know the value of the success of the mission. In this is why we want you to join the pack. It's not just veterans that get the benefits. They do get the benefits for free. It's for the veterans, but we also have supporters and donors and partners and volunteers in the ranks that are doing it for the mission. That's what makes it grow. So if you were interested in joining the pack, being part of the mission, there's lots of ways you can do it. I'm not going to harp on them. You can do a monthly membership on our website. They're as low as $10. You can volunteer and bring your particular talents to the group. Maybe some of you know how to work on cars. Maybe you're a mechanic and we have a veteran that needs a mechanic. Maybe you know how to work on ACs and there's a veteran that's sitting in a 90-degree house. It's these types of assets that are most valuable to us, even beyond some of the money. So we're going to go to a Q&A, but before we do, I just want to say thanks again for having us. And I also want to check my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything. This is what I do. I write down on the cards and then I ignore them. Right? I've done it so many times. But really, when your heart is in the mission, when you speak from the heart and you act from the heart, you'll never be misunderstood and you'll never go wrong. That's why it's important to be part of one. All right. So we'll take questions from the live, and we'll also take questions from Zoom.
You have created a manual which people can follow to turn a dog into a service dog. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the second part is, you said there were 10 different functions. Does the manual create a dog who can do all of those functions, or are they focused on the specific problems of the person who's training the dog. So maybe they need one or two, but they don't need all 10.
All of the job descriptions kind of have their own flavor to them. And training one dog in all of the different practices isn't really beneficial to a veteran because a veteran's going to have their own special needs. As I mentioned, we have the hypervigilance PTSD, we have the social anxiety, we have other issues that come into play. And each one of the job descriptions, but each one of the job descriptions is intentionally meant to serve the conditions that the veterans are struggling with most. So having a fully equipped, all things considered and all things applied service dog isn't necessarily the best thing in the world. Bigger portion of the process is the veteran's ability to commit and grow. They grow the bond. They make different decisions in their lives. They try to do better. They study on how to, have a better dog. And to us, it doesn't really matter, how far they go. We have veterans that start with angry dogs and we rehabilitate the dogs if we can. I think a better answer to your question is this. A dog doesn't have to be a service dog in order to be of service. Meaning, if a veteran has a specific disability, when they go through the process and they create the communication and the link and the bond with the dog, a lot of these inherent abilities of the dogs will come through as needed. It's a give and take. And so the trajectory of the dog is quite literally based on the dog's ability and the veteran's ability. And they get what they can out of the training. And if it gets all the way up to service dog, that's great. And if they don't get to service dog, that doesn't mean they're not providing that benefit. We use the job descriptions to say, here's our target. Here's what we want you to do with the dog, to start working towards these things. And then over time, as the dog matures, as a veteran becomes better at the training, those types of situations manifest themselves in that way.
Thank you, Dan. We have a question from the Zoom audience. Joyce, can you come in, please, and ask your question? And thank you for finding this fine fellow to present to us today.
So pleased that you were able to come. My question is, I know there are dogs who train to be service dogs who never make the cut. And in fact, my neighbor has a dog that we share, and that little sweetheart didn't ever make the cut. But are there service people for whom this just won't work? They can't get used to a dog, there's some other issue, or has that ever happened?
Yes, it has happened. Not every dog is cut out for service dog work. That in and of itself wouldn't be a disqualifier for K9 Kavalry unless, they have some kind of condition that is incompatible with the dog's behaviors and they themselves make the decision to either rehome the dog or replace a dog with another. Keep in mind, we don't give dogs. We get veterans that have dogs. And so it's kind of a mixed bag of what we get. And we try to establish a baseline and a growth pattern from the moment they start. If the dog, because the dogs are not monetized, are not our dogs, we don't ever say, you can't give your dog away or you can't rehome your dog. That has happened. And, in situations like this, if the dog needs to be rehomed, sometimes we jump in and try to find a place for them. We try to find another pack member that's looking for another dog, or we try to find somebody that's trusted that we know that the dog's going to be, taken care of. Sometimes we extend the membership with the dog if it goes to another veteran, and we bring that veteran in so we can keep having that dog on the roll. The support isn't based on the dog's ability in our world. The support is based on the veteran's commitment, both to K9 Kavalry and with our programming and our techniques and our training.
Thank you. We have from our Friendly House audience question. Is that you, Ann? Okay, come on in.
question. You mentioned that the dog that you got into this in like 2012. How old is Ranger?
I got Ranger in 2017.
Okay.
He's coming up on 8 years old, and that's when we actually started K9 Kavalry.
Oh.
It happened to be that 2012 was when Andrew died, and it was also kind of the beginning of my understanding of my own PTSD and what needs I had with a dog. And I happened to be given Ranger in 2017. Now, it's an interesting story here, if I can. When I applied for a service dog in one of those organizations that does training give, and they said, okay, well, it's going to be a 2-year waiting list. Okay, I'll do the 2 years. I don't know if I'm really going to be here then, but okay. And so, you know, one of the processes they had was you need to get a letter from your counselor explaining why, or explaining, you know, your eligibility. And so I went to my counselor, my VA counselor, and explained what I was trying to do. She says, I've never heard of such a letter. Let me talk to the other counselor. So she did. And it went like this. I have a veteran looking for a dog. And the other counselor says, I have a dog looking for a veteran. And it just so happened that the other counselor was the counselor to the mother of Andrew Keller. And she was talking about Ranger to that counselor. And so they put us together.
And when I mention there's, you know, karmic things that happen within our world, this is one of them. You know, not being deterred by the idea of waiting 2 years for a dog and still going through the process lended itself to me getting Ranger at 6 months old, because the two counselors happened to make the connection. She's still grandma today. Now, I'll tell you this. It used to be grandma could do whatever she wanted with Ranger, like she was the one exception. And then we had to have a talk when she started taking him to buffet lines. We affectionately joke about that. She still can, you know, she could come and get Ranger and do whatever she wants and go out and have fun with it. He was her service dog before me in dealing with her loss of her son. But my point being that, you know, when we've seen a lot of growth and a lot of assistance coming from places that we don't even anticipate. Here's another one. Veteran calls and says, I have a dog that's having a bowel problem. Is it an emergency? And can you help me pay for it? Regardless if you can pay for it, it needs to be seen by a vet. So go and we'll figure it out later. Well, it turned out I paid for that visit. And we're totally fine with that. We do that a lot. You know, if they can't cover a bill here or there for their dog. I never even looped around back to it. Never thought about it again. Until a couple of days later, I get an anonymous donation for the same amount of the bill by somebody who is, I assume, associated to the veteran, heard about it and decided to reimburse us. And so they decided to take the bill. I didn't even think that would be an option. I didn't even try. It just happened. And that's the kind of thing that tells us, that's the kind of thing that can tell you that you're on the right path and you're doing the right thing and you're on the right mission. The mission provides for itself in mysterious ways a lot of the time. Next question.
Thank you, Dan. We have questioner number 3.
I'm a veteran also. During Vietnam, I don't have PTSD. I was at the greatest time of my life in service at that time. But I now have a large dog that's been with me for 13 years, and he's starting to get lame. And I was wondering about the dogs in your service. How do you deal with it when they get too old?
Oh, that's a good question. First of all, sir, thank you for your service, even though if it sounded like a vacation. Well, let me just say, being a Vietnam veteran is not an easy task. You know, you guys came home to a lot of vitriol, and the idea of a veteran back then wasn't as understood as it is now. So I respect you from that perspective.
On to the dog. So what happens when a dog gets too old to do the business, right? Well, I've gotten this phone call from a few people. We've lost, I think, probably 5 dogs since we've done this. And We have a special protocol that we run when somebody is deciding whether or not it's time for them to let go. And it goes like this. What's best for the dog? What's best for the veteran? What's best for the pack? Your answer will be 2 out of 3. And it may be today, what's best for the dog is just to keep him calm and not take him outside or not put the, not chase ball too much. And what's best for the veteran is to let go. And what's best for the pack is to keep them around a little longer. There you've got your 2. Or it could be the other way around. It's always a personal decision. I mean, we can't ever say when it's time to go, just like we can't say when it's time to replace one. Some veterans are like, I want a dog, then the very next day. Other veterans are like, I want to wait a while to respect the honor, of my dog. And it's all individual. We don't really hold any opinions on that, but that protocol is the one thing that has helped us in situations like this where it's difficult to make a decision. And we've applied it in different ways, but that's the one thing that we always refer to in this moment as what's best for the dog, what's best for the veteran, what's best for the pack. You'll have to answer those questions on your own one day. And, if your 2 out of 3 changes, then you'll know, what path is laid out ahead of you. Now, for veterans with dogs that pass, we actually have a supply person who does crafty stuff. She likes to, make cards and things like that. And she has the responsibility of creating memorial plaques that we send to a veteran after the dogs pass. And we've sent out, I think, like I said, 5 or 6 of those. I've got one on my wall. I had one that passed as well. And, that is the thing that we can do. We can help them make the decision if they're asking for it. We can help them with the how, and we can help them by memorializing their dog's life by sending them something that has like a picture of their dog in it and their rank and other things as well. So that's what we do. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Okay, hang on. We have question number 4.
Oh,
No,
okay.
question 4.
Dogs for veterans, where did you get them?
We don't actually obtain dogs. As I mentioned, we find veterans that already have dogs, and we develop bond between the 2. So
where can we find dogs? We have people that want to donate dogs every once in a while come by. We have veterans that are looking for dogs. We don't tend to have those 2 things coincidentally happening at the same time, which makes it difficult for us to make a match. And even if we could, we try to step out of the placement. We put the person in contact with the veteran and they decide if they want to do that. Keeping the dog in the responsibilities and the care of the dog in the realm of the veteran not only helps us manage our overhead and manage our liabilities and our commitment to the dog in and of itself, but it also provides more of a value to the veteran in the way of providing care and providing what the dog needs just with different techniques. It's not hard for a person to develop a bond with a dog. And most times it's not hard for a dog to develop a bond with a person, but when you place a dog from one environment to another or one person to another, you're always going to get different behaviors. You're going to get new behaviors. We call it the cocktail. The cocktail contains the people, the dogs, and the environment. And so if you take one person out of the cocktail, different behaviors. If you put a dog in the cocktail, different behaviors. And so when you move them from one environment to another, you place them with a veteran, there's a coping stage where they have to learn more about each other and they have to learn to trust each other and they have to learn their vernacular. They have to learn expectations. They have to learn guardrails. And
for the most part, every once in a while we get a veteran.
Like, I think I'm ready for a dog, but I'm not sure. Other times we get veterans who are, I'm 100% for this, and one day I'll get a dog, but I want to volunteer now. But we never place a dog. That's important. We actually find veterans that have dogs. And a lot of the places that place dogs will turn down people who already have dogs. They won't take their dog into the program because they're already developing their own dogs. And so this fills that need.
Dan,
Yes.
if this is from the Zoom audience here, if someone in the audience wants to join the pack or meets a veteran who wants to join, can you elaborate? That would be what, first of all, that's question one. How do they do it? How do they get into your group? And then the second part of the question is, can you also elaborate on the role that the coaches have in supporting the veteran and their dog?
Sure.
Yeah.
For veterans out there, we have an application on our website, and as opposed to like all of the questions and determining factors, we are veterans and we know how to read DD-214s. That's for everyone else. That's a separation letter that says honorable discharge. So when you apply, there's some basic information, some questions. You upload your DD-214 and your benefit letter from the VA, and those are the only two documents that we need in order to qualify you for the system. Once you get in, there's a 5-stage, 5-module curriculum that's recorded, and I'm sorry, but it's younger me on there, and so you all have to go through that. But they go through the stages and then they take a final, and then with the final, we kind of have a guidepost on where the veteran is with their dog, and then we assign them to a trainer internally that they start either working on Zoom or live. And so that's how the process works for the veterans. If you know a veteran and you think that they might benefit from this, you could just refer them to our website. It's K9 Kavalry.org, and Kavalry is spelled with a K in our world. So K9, Kavalry. Also, it's not Calvary. Calvary is the churchy kind of word. We are the cavalry, like call in the cavalry, right? It says that on my license plate right now. And then the second question was, how can someone be a...
Elaborate on the coach's role in supporting the veteran and their dog.
And by coach, I think they mean the trainer.
The trainer.
Well, it's a collaborative effort. If a veteran says, my dog's vest doesn't fit anymore, we send them this to our supply person, and the supply person who lives in Astoria drop ships it to their house after taking all the measurements. It goes to the supply department. If they need a training thing, if they have a training question, then they have their trainer that they can ask either any number of ways. They could do it on Facebook Messenger. They can do it through our website. They can do it through email. They can run it through operations if they wanted to. The volunteers work together to keep the veterans served. So whenever a need comes up, it gets routed to the proper department and it gets handled appropriately. That's the military way.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe we have too many departments. I'm still looking at that, but
Yeah.
I'd rather have too many than too few and have veterans fall between the cracks. That's my biggest fear.
Go ahead.
And your nonprofit provides significant support for veterans' health. Do you get any support from the Veterans Administration?
We do not.
There is a bill that is enacted into law called the PACT Act. I'm not the PACT Act, the PAWS Act. PACT Act is something different. The PAWS Act was written and developed by a group of nonprofits that do the train and give model. Therefore, those dogs are monetized and considered an asset of that organization, which enables the VA to be able to provide resources, funds, food, whatever. Since we don't actually maintain possession of the dog, it's not ours, it's the veterans. We're not eligible for that. So we don't get any direct funds from the VA through the PAWS Act. And as I'm aware, there aren't any other vectors that we're eligible for as well. However, we're 100% volunteer run. We have very little overhead. We run a very smooth operation with very little fraud, waste, and abuse, or actually no fraud, waste, and abuse, but very little, miscellaneous, right? And it's all intended to keep us at the mark of 85% of our funds going directly to the veterans every year. And we've done that for 8 years straight. So it's a different model that is easier to operate, where we don't actually need the money resources from the VA. Although it would be nice, there's just no way for us to get it. However, our biggest asset is our combined resources in the pack. I'm no better than anybody else in the pack. I'm just the first one, and I'm the one that talks too much, right? Everyone else, we have veterans that are fly on the wall. There's one in the channel right now that that always watches and almost never speaks. We have those that contribute all kinds of things. We have those that are, you know, angel donors in times of need. We have everyone plays their part, and the VA does play their part too. You know, not the VA as a whole, but we also have practitioners and counselors that work at the VA and know about our program and send us referrals, or, you know, send us information. There's one that works in neurology that happens to also work with scent training with dogs. And so he cooperates with us and helps us, you know, develop program for scent training and helps us serve those kinds of veterans as well. But no is the answer to the VA for now. However, you know, I'll just take a little aside here. We do get involved in legislative things too. We actually submitted a bill last year to the Washington Senate asking for veterans with service dogs to get access to handicap placards. And even though it wasn't voted on last year, we have more support for it this year than we did last year, and we're going to be resubmitting it. And that is just the above and beyond that we expect from each other within the pack. Some of these solutions just self-present themselves, and we're always willing to take the opportunity if there's not too much risk to it.
Thank you, Dan. We've got questioner number 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is your experience, or do you have any, with dogs helping veterans who are living on the street?
Dogs helping veterans on the street.
And I'm sure everybody here is aware of the homeless issues in Portland. As of right now, we do not have any, you know, homeless veterans in our pack. We've come across them, we've worked with them, we work with other organizations that work with them as well. We give them training, so it's all the same. But my experience in this particular area shows that, one, a veteran with a service dog in a homeless environment has an extreme amount of support compared to the rest that they might be around. 2, the presence of a dog has a calming effect on the community that they are in and around on a daily basis. 3, it has a deterrent effect. And 4, it makes them less likely to engage in a, you know, in a hostile or illogical manner under pressure. And it may be difficult for a veteran to truly properly care for a dog in an environment like that, but the benefits are all enough the same. It gives the veteran a kind of a bonus level to apply to their situation, so that they kind of have, you know, something that'll push them through the daily grind above and beyond what others may have, even though the dog has a mass contribution to everybody that it's around in the first place. So it doesn't just help the veteran, it helps all the people that the veteran are living around as well. And that being said, there's Fido Food Bank provides free food for veterans with dogs. So if any of you are homeless and you're trying to feed your dog, you should check out Fido Food Bank. They can help you and at least keep your dog in a, you know, in a comfortable situation.
Thank you, Joe.
So, yep.
Okay, we have questioner number 7. I think that's you.
Yeah, by way of background, I'm a psychologist. So my group of people is one of the groups of people who get these requests for letters. And so over the years, there's been a substantial differentiation between service dogs and companion dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So could you, for example, taking a companion dog on an airplane is a whole different matter than taking a service dog on an airplane. Could you speak to where this level of, yes, now this is a service dog, no, we haven't made that, they are functioning as a companion dog, but that limits the availability of the dog to the person?
Down to the training. 88 doesn't require a service dog to be trained by any particular agency or in any particular way. And they do provide that you can train your own dog. But the basic difference between the two is an emotional support dog or a companion dog is one that makes you feel better. And a service dog is one that's been trained in a specific task. And it's that specific task element that people don't know to ask for. There's only 3 questions you can ask when someone's walking a service dog. Is that a service dog, and what task are they trained to do? And then if they act stupid, you can ask them to leave. But a lot of times people will fudge the answer, but in reality, a service dog is one that has been trained to accomplish a specific task. Some of the more used ones are like seeing eye dogs that know when to cross versus when not to cross, or diabetic dogs that can alert to a drop in the diabetic level and help somebody run over to get medication. In Ranger's situation, this is why we have all the job descriptions, because we train the veterans. Veterans don't like being interrogated, by the way. So if they're at the airport and the dog is fully dressed like Ranger is, and somebody comes up and says, is that a service dog? The answer is yes. And what are they trained to do? Mirror, radar. And what is that? Call K9 Kavalry. And we also send them with a letter that says this dog shall not be separated from their veteran. They are trained in this task. And it's easier to see when you have the seeing eye dog and you can see that the person's blind. But when you're dealing, I don't even have to tell you this, when you're dealing with psychological disabilities in a public environment, the resistance against the service dog becomes part of the problem, and it becomes a trigger in and of itself. And so it's kind of a catch-22. And it's made worse by people who bring their Chihuahua in a purse into the store and say it's a service dog, right? Or I've gone into stores and walked by a dog that's in a grocery cart, which, by the way, is 100% illegal. Right. And Ranger will look up at the dog and whoa, 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 is barking down at him. And Ranger's like, what's going on with this dog, dude? Right? The differences are not always evident, but usually they are. And it's more about the general public attempting to misuse and mischaracterize their dog's training in order to get the benefit of having the dog there with them. But again, to answer your question, a companion dog is equivalent to an emotional support dog. And an emotional support dog is a dog that makes you feel good. A service dog is a dog that's been trained in a specific task to provide for a specific disability. And even though you don't have to reveal your specific disability to somebody who asks, you must be able to at least characterize, if not identify, the task that they've been trained to do.
And you all are certified?
We do. We actually have, so not every dog becomes a service dog. I think everyone knows that. And I mentioned a dog doesn't need to be a service dog in order to be of service. Well, in our program, we have 2 stages for our dogs. It's a growth pattern, and they all have ranks. Ranger's a full colonel, right? Or a full general. Why did I say colonel? Y'all can, you can roast me on that later, guys. But the whole first stage is all enlisted ranks. They're stripes, right? And they don't even go into stage 2 until they pass service dog training. Then when they pass service dog test, then they become officers, and they gain through officer status. So this is how we kind of generate the momentum of the training. Can it be that a dog never makes it through a service dog test? Yes. What happens? We park them in the NCO club, and they get a rank for every year until they're done doing what they do. Right? Are they a service dog? No, they're not a certified service dog. Do they have qualities of a service dog? Sure. Do they provide a service to the veteran? Abso-freaking-lutely. Right? Now, we wouldn't tell
somebody who has a 5-stripe dog that likes to bark a lot, we wouldn't give them a letter to go travel. We wouldn't say they're a service dog when they're not a service dog. They're in training, SDIT, service dog in training. It's after they pass the service dog test that we start giving them more things, which ironically is kind of fun. The first stage is all about tests, basic obedience, advanced obedience. We have a Walmart test, and then we have a service dog test. The second one is about milestones. They start out as a captain, and they get a bar every time they accomplish another goal. And some of the goals include being on a plane for 5 hours, standing on coffee cans and taking a video of it and sending it to the rest of the pack. Being able to wear eye protection and ear protection for an hour at a time. Getting your dog on a jumbotron will get the dog a rank. And it's not the veterans ranks, it's their ranks, right? You know how hard it was for me to put a full general on him? He's a full general. He's a 4-star general. Yeah, he's made a lot of accomplishments. He's been to a Styx concert. He's been on several different types of military aircraft, including one that had the hangar door open while the Thunderbirds were going by on Afterburner.
Oh.
He has, well, when he started out, he was the mad pooper. He had an accident in the Portland courthouse one time.
Oh.
You know, the dogs aren't perfect, but they do try to maintain the training and the discipline, and more importantly, just understand what it is that the veteran is asking of them. So that's where we put most of our attention, is in the communication, the techniques for gaining willful compliance versus reluctant compliance. We have a lot of buzzwords like that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Dan, I think we're at the end of our time together, but we have afterthoughts. Will you be able to hang on for a little bit after? I better
stay
ask
for a while.
Ranger first. What do you think?
Seems fine to me.
Okay, all right. Then we're going to do a little closing, and then we'll get just kind of a conversation after that. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you so much. This was just